As Hurricane Lee makes its way through the Atlantic, you aren't alone in watching its every move. Maybe you're even a little anxious. A local psychotherapist is reminding people it's normal to have some anxiety these days. Nancy Blair is a registered counselling therapist. Miss Blair, understandably, people are anxious about Hurricane Lee. They may have anxiety about it, in fact. I'm just wondering, to begin with, what would you say to them just off the top?
Well, the first thing I'd probably say to people is if you're having some anxiety about Hurricane Lee, you are not the only one. There's a lot of people experiencing this, and also the fact that you're having some anxiety, there's nothing wrong with you. It's natural, it's normal, because there's something going on. It's something. Hurricanes are scary. They can be. I think we need to recognize that individually in our communities, that people are going through this right now.
Yeah, and I think in some cases people can get to kind of a dark space pretty quickly. How do you prevent that kind of snowballing of thinking that can make some people even more anxious about an impending storm?
Well, I think one way to do it is simply to accept that this is happening. Once you accept it, you're putting into a different space altogether. And you start to say, well, what can I do? And again, what can I do individually, but also in my community? Asking this question and doing things gives you agency. That's a therapeutic word I just love. It means it makes a difference what you do. So we're looking to shift people from straight anxiety into actually doing something. And that makes people more connected and feeling more in control of the situation.
Yeah, and in the case of Hurricane Lee, we're not exactly sure what's going to happen, what the exact weather conditions will be, of course. But with climate change, and we're seeing more storms, it seems, are you seeing more so-called climate anxiety in your practice?
I am. I've been working at this for 6 years now, and I work with people who are really suffering with climate anxiety. Now, I don't want to put anyone into that role, because the first thing, like you said, we are in a situation where it is predicted we'll have more storms and increased severity. And I, for one, don't like this at all. I don't imagine anybody does. And we have come out last fall with Fiona, then we had the fires and the floods. So we're getting into this whole pattern, and that's part of the acceptance where we are. And again, I'm going back to what do we want to do about it, and how do we deal with these feelings? But you're talking about the snowball. You got to remember where we're living right now. We're living in a place, strong community spirit. People help each other. We've got a lot of experience with hurricanes, a lot. Not so much with fires and floods, although we picked up a lot this summer. But we're getting a pretty good idea of handling this. So focusing back into what action do we want to take. But if you are suffering with, everybody's struggling with money, struggling with kids going back to school, maybe housing issues, it's good to try to keep these a little bit separate. Some people will need and say, I want an individual therapist to go and do and sort out some of these things. But I think a lot can be done by talking to people we know in our community. And for example, one thing that I think helps a lot, I've started to do it more and more over the last few years, and right now with Hurricane Lee, I've started to say, I'm nervous about Hurricane Lee. How do you feel? Start the conversation.
I mean, because if you don't start to sort some of this out, like you say, the other stressors in life as well, what is the potential deepening mental health issue?
This is a concern. We see the Government of Canada, the UN, all counsellors. I'm involved with a lot of work in my professional association with people really not grappling with this, and it can get more and more difficult. The anxiety can go up, can connect to it, make it difficult sort of to make daily decisions. That's why when I use the word untangle, we like to untangle things a little bit. Because the reality is we're looking at climate change. Until that changes, we're going to be looking at these weather situations. And I always say about the climate crisis, I never thought it would be this uncomfortable. And I never thought I would dislike it as much. But we're entering into a situation where most of us are uncomfortable and feeling some anxiety a lot of the time. And that's why I like to get it out into general conversation.
Yeah. And just before I let you go, very quickly, you're planning a workshop to deal with some of this kind of thing, aren't you?
Yeah, we've got a workshop October 28th at Christchurch Hall. And I guess part of it is looking at mental, how we prepare mentally and also physically, because you've got to remember how much experience we have in the Maritimes. I mean, we're fantastic at the 72 hours preparation, making sure everything's ready. I think we can do more and more in terms of talking to our neighbors and saying, how can I help you? Maybe you can help me with this. And just make this kind of what we say we normalize. And say, this is part of life, so how are we going to deal with it?
Yeah, we seem to be getting more and more used to it for sure. Nancy Blair, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you very much.